start later, but.
Let's do it.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Montgomery City Council meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is exactly 6:01 p.m. This evening, we'll have the invocation given by Councilman Wilkerson. Please.
Today is the day the Lord has made. Let us be glad and rejoice here. Lord, we come thanking you for the opportunity that you've given us. Thank you for enabling us to be transparent. Thank you for being open to other ideas. Thank you for all that you've done. And bless us in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
Flag.
to the flag
United States of America.
United
States of
States
America,
And
to
to
the
the
republic
Republic,
For which it stands,
one nation,
one nation for God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, the Texas flag.
honor the Texas flag.
honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to the Texas,
Pledge
one
allegiance
state,
to
under God, one indivisible.
one.
Okay. All right. I didn't see anything. The next item of business on the agenda is a visitor and citizen forum. I didn't see anything. Secretary Hensley, was there?
I have not received any emails for requests.
Wonderful. All right. Then that brings us to the next item of business, the consent agenda. Item number 1, matters related to the approval of minutes on June 4th, 2020, workshop meeting, and June 23rd, 2020, regular meeting. Number 2, consideration of possible action regarding adoption of an escrow agreement by and between the City of Montgomery and Cheatham Management, LLC for Hills of Town Creek, Section 4.
Mayor,
Can be singular. Yes, ma'am?
I had sent out to City Council 2 amendments plus a spelling change on the
Yes.
June 23rd minutes.
Okay. Yes, I saw that. Thank you.
I didn't have any comments on the minutes or the escrow agreement.
I had a question. On the 380 agreement, I don't want to get in a lot of detail, but could somebody give us like the Cliff Note version of what that entails? Or is it real lengthy?
It's really not. This is Dave. Good evening. It is essentially what it is there were some infrastructure lines put in, water and sewer lines, and I don't know if Emma's Way, the roadway, was part of that or not, but it's a reimbursement off the ad valorem taxes as a way for the developer to keep some of the infrastructure investment that he made for it.
So if he didn't have that, they would pay like either an impact fee for the connections. It doesn't get around an impact fee, doesn't necessarily have a PDD, right?
Well, the subdivision was this right. The sections 1 and 2 were before, they were platted before the impact fees. I'm sorry, sections 2 and 3. 1 is the apartments. The section 4 will be subject to impact fees, but that's irrespective of the 380.
The only thing the 380 has to do with it is the source of funds for this, is my understanding.
Right, and I shouldn't, I do want to clarify, the impact fees for the subdivision will be eligible for a reimbursement as part of the 380. It's based on ad valorem and impact fees. So in theory, he would get the impact fees back. But again, that's based on it at a time of connection. So it's not like he gets all of the impact fees back at once.
What he's doing here is we just giving him the reimbursing the 380 fees for part of his escrow fund.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. The check is due in about 2 weeks per the agreement, and so essentially, instead of just swapping checks, we're just going to move it over. Does
that cause issues as far as claim paperwork? You know what I'm getting at. I mean,
yes, sir, I do, and I don't
I'm
believe,
saying,
not to my knowledge, it's something that we will run past the auditor to clarify the best way to track those transfers.
okay. Well, it's kind of the same example as we talked about the SRI report last week, where the state gave us too much money last year for sales tax, and then now we have they took it back a couple of months this year. So that whole report, looking at the mean data and all the trends, gets all skewed because the money's there, but you just can't see it in the right place. So, okay. You answered my question. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I move to approve the consent agenda with the changes that Ms. Hensley sent out earlier today.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda as presented, including the changes Ms. Hensley sent out earlier today. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It's now up for discussion. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented with changes sent by Ms. Hensley as of today, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will accept the consent agenda as presented with the changes Ms. Hensley sent out today. I would like to out though, we do have a quorum, but it looks like we are missing Councilman Tom Cronin. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what I was just going to ask to note.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, next item of business on your agenda is consideration and possible action. Number 3, consideration and possible action regarding adoption of the following resolution. Resolution approving the Montgomery County Emergency Communications District budget for fiscal year 2021.
For the Montgomery County Emergency Communication District, their proposed budget must be approved by a majority of governing bodies in the participating jurisdictions within the county to take effect. And approval is assumed if an entity doesn't provide any action. So normally this is a budget that would go on our consent agenda. Having several new council members, I've asked Chip Van Steenberg from the district if he could make just a very brief presentation, and if there's any questions on the district, you have the opportunity to ask them. So I'll turn the floor over to Chip.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. The Montgomery County Emergency Communication District, we are the regional 911 authority recognized by the state of Texas. So we serve as the go-between with the telecommunication providers and the 911 emergency call centers that operate here in Montgomery County. There are 4 911 centers in the county. They're not run by my district. They're run by the Sheriff's Office, by Conroe Police Department, by Woodlands Fire Department, and by the Montgomery County Hospital District. So we supply those agencies with equipment, and we supply the network that they operate on, and we provide the go-between with the telecommunication companies to make sure that when a customer dials 911, it gets directed to the correct call center. We also do all the addressing for the county. We maintain a GIS system that has all the road center lines, the street address ranges, everything addressing related happens here at our agency. We provide funding for the 2 call centers that are our primary what we call PSAPs in our agency, public safety answering points. So the city of Conroe or Montgomery County Sheriff's Office are where 911 calls are originally answered, and we provide funding to those agencies for a certain percentage of their staff members to answer those 911 calls. And if it's a law enforcement call, those agencies handle that call and stay with that caller till the end. If it's a caller that needs fire, rescue, or emergency medical, then that call is going to get transferred to one of our secondary PSAPs. So we provide funding for those primary PSAPs. We also provide Additional services like translating for multiple foreign languages, emergency alerting. We provide some public education, as well as a training program for all dispatchers in the county. So, as Richard mentioned, our budget is up for approval every year, and we submit it to the counties and to the Commissioners Court. And the statute requires that a majority of the cities either vote to approve it or take no action at all. In addition to the Commissioners Court, vote for approval. We operate under a 5-member board. The board is appointed from different entities. The cities appoint 2 members to our board. And right now we have a vacancy on our board from the city representatives. And I believe you all have a ballot out for representation on our board. 2 of our members are appointed by the Commissioners Court, and 1 member is appointed by the fire chiefs of all the fire departments in the county. With that being said, our budget is about $4.7 million. We're funded by the 911 fees that people pay on their phone bills. That's whether that's a landline service, a VoIP phone, contract cell phone, or prepaid cell phone. Each of those has a 911 fee. That's going to come to our agency, and we're going to provide those services that I mentioned. Overall, our budget revenue projections for the coming year are fairly flat, based upon the economy. Our income stream is, I believe, fairly inelastic, although if I think that there's one of our income streams that might be vulnerable to the economy, it's going to be prepaid cell phones, but that's a very small part overall of our revenue picture. So I'm just projecting a 0.2% increase, 0.4% increase in revenue for the coming year. On the expenditure side, a 2.1% increase. Our total expenditures are estimated at $4,770,580. Our largest single line item, over $1.7 million, is for those salary reimbursements we make to the Sheriff's Office and the Conroe Police Department to answer the 911 calls. An additional $240,000 for data connections and phone lines necessary to connect all the call centers with the carriers. We also offer a large item. Another large line item is certificate pay that we offer to all the call takers. If they'll make an effort towards additional continuing education and improvement, we offer some certificate pay bonuses to those 911 call takers. And then also for our service enhancements like translation services, emergency alerting, we provide a system where callers can submit a profile of their household that will give first responders additional information when they make a 911 call. Text messaging, all those additional services, we budgeted about $145,300 for. Those are all in our largest category of expenditures called cost of service, and all those expenditures together increased by 3.6% for next year. Our other large category of expenditures is our personnel expenditures. We have a staff of 11 people, tech people, GIS people. Are the primary parts of our budget. That's an increase of 1.8% over the current year. And then we have a category of expenditures known as general administrative, things like our fuel and maintenance. We're budgeting that down 4.1% for next year. And finally, we have a capital reserve, and out of that, we have some capital expenditures planned. The largest one being whether or not we want to purchase some land for a new facility. This facility we're in right now was built as a regional 911 call center planned back in the late 90s. We have only one entity in our building right now. We are at Conroe at the Sheriff's Office complex. The district owns a building inside that complex, and part of that building includes a call center floor, which is on our second floor of our building. Right now, it's just got the Sheriff's Office in it because it's not large enough to do anything on a regional basis. So if we're in the middle of a master planning process right now. So we've set aside money to buy some land if that is determined to be the need for what we want to do in the future. And we also budget $500,000 that we make available to the 911 call centers for improvements in those call centers. That's a revenue participation sharing program that we have with right there. So altogether, it's a capital budget of a little over $2 million for next year. I'll be happy to answer any questions and provide any information if there's the need.
I have a quick question, if I may. Last year, you added about $70,000, give or take, to your capital fund or I guess almost 80 from revenues over expenses. This year, you're hoping for flat, but you're spending $3 million in capital outlay last year, $2 million in capital outlay this year. And last year's was mostly technology. And, you know, your expectations are for about $3.5 million in your capital fund at the end of this year. How do you build up your capital fund again with that kind of continuous annual outlay if you're not saving along the way?
Well, this particular year, we made a major upgrade to our system. That happens about every 5 years. So we don't anticipate needing that again. And we have been setting aside some money for a possible district relocation or new facility, if that should be the case. We traditionally have budgeted very conservatively. So we've been adding to our capital reserve at usually about $250,000 to $300,000 per year based upon our budgeting practice. Had to trim it down a little bit this year, so I'm not sure we'll add that much. But it's just been revenues over expenditures.
Okay.
And we pay cash for everything. We have no debt at this point.
Okay. I was just wondering, because if you just look at the last 2 years, it seems like, you know, if you have from, you know, $1.5 million in technology expenses coming up again, or, you know, $1 million or $2 million every year, you're going to run out of reserve to pay for stuff quickly.
That's a great observation. It's you just happen to catch the 2 years where we drew down out of reserves a very large amount the current year we're in, and planning to next year. But we wouldn't be able to do that obviously going forward. So yes, good observation.
Sure. You need to have longer periods of time and smaller numbers so nobody can see it without magnifying glass.
Okay. We do a 5-year capital plan, and the capital plan always shows us going to zero at the end of the 5 years, but we never have. You know, we always have an increasing balance because of our budgeting practices.
Right. It's hard because I would imagine at the end of 5 years, the stuff you invested in the beginning is almost worthless. So it's not like you can just, there's no residual value for you to sell to somebody else when you're investing in essentially life-saving equipment.
Correct. Right.
So you have to continue to, you know, over and over and over again, every 5 years, put that kind of money aside and invest in that kind of technology.
That's right. Yes, I agree.
Hey, Chip, have you guys had any discussions on where you might consider placing that new facility?
We have some prerequisites for what type of land we would be looking for, with some of the characteristics. For example, having the ability to draw power from multiple substations, or at least 2 substations. Puts a limit on a lot of pieces of property, but if you can get on the borderline between 2 substations, and also the availability of multiple telecommunication providers.
That's...
Actually, we actually are exploring a piece of property right now that's close to you guys. It's near the bunker.
Oh yeah. Awesome.
It meets those criteria.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I appreciate you coming out. I'm sure you remember that even though this shows up on our consent agenda, it's usually quite a contentious topic with a lot of interest.
Right.
So it should never be on the consent agenda because it's, you know, spending that kind of money for that kind of important business is always of interest.
Yes. I've been here for 8 years, and I think I've attended 4 Montgomery City Council meetings. Some of the cities will just approve it, and they won't even let us know. We have to try to watch those agendas. But you guys have always been kind enough to invite me out, and I appreciate that.
We're a little detail oriented out here. It can be tedious for some people, but other people like it. So
Right. That's good.
Well, Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution of the Montgomery County Emergency Communication District budget for fiscal year 2021.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the Montgomery County Emergency District proposed budget. This motion is debatable and amendable and requires a majority vote. This is now open for discussion. All those in favor of approving the proposed budget for Montgomery County Emergency Communication District proposed budget for FY 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and we will approve the proposed budget for Montgomery County Emergency Communication District proposed budget for FY 2021. Thank you so much, Chip.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all.
thanks.
Item number 4 on your agenda, consideration of possible action regarding acceptance of bid and award for the construction contract, the downtown water line replacement project.
Okay. This is the second time this funded project has been bid this year. The first bidding process resulted in 1 bid submitted for $1.3 million, which was rejected previously by City Council. When the project was rebid, some items were removed from the base bid and itemized as alternate bid items, and some of the material selection changes in the project specifications were made in order to attract more contractors and potentially reduce the cost for the project. This is part of roughly $1.7 million funding to complete this project and water plant number 3 improvements. The timeline for water plant number 3 project is for council to award the construction contract, hopefully at the August 11th meeting, with work starting in late September, early October. Additional work on the storage tank is planned for later in the year. And we have Catherine Vu from the engineering here for this item. So Catherine.
Hi, good evening. Chris is unable to be on the call this evening, so I will be handling this one tonight. As Richard was mentioning, this is the rebid of the downtown waterline replacement project. And again, the first bid came back in at about $1.3 million. So in light of that, it was significantly higher than what we were hoping for. And so we went back and took another look at the scope and modified the scope just a little bit to include part of it as alternate bid items. And we also looked at some of the pipe material to see if there was a different pipe material that we could also include as an alternate in the event that it would potentially come back with better prices. We wanted to present more options to the city to try to find the best price. So what this came back with, our recommendation of award is in your packets, as well as an exhibit showing how we broke it down into base bid and then alternates number 1 and 2. So our base bid includes Highway 105 from Shepherd Street all the way over to Pond Street. It goes north on Pond Street and then cuts across 149 at Pond Street right in front of the community center, and then goes north on 149 and ties in at Berkeley Street. So again, this is upsizing all of those. Most of them are 6 or 8 inch lines up to 12-inch lines. And so through the process of rebidding, the bids came back, as you can see in your packets. There were a substantial amount of alternate options for them. And so we ended up saving about, if you do the kind for kind with what our original bid was, with what that same scope of work would be with the rebid, it's about $204,000 lower than what it was with the rebid. And the option that we're recommending is about $433,000 less than our original bid that we received. So there's a substantial savings that you're experiencing by rebidding. So Our recommendation is to proceed with NERI construction in the amount of $913,338,000, excuse me. And what this will give you is the base bid, again, along 105 Pond Street and up 149 with restrained joint PVC instead of fusible PVC. The contractors were able to give us a better price, and we find it to be an equivalent product.
So that doesn't change the maintenance outlook for the same duration?
The maintenance outlook?
In terms of it's not going to cost the city more to maintain, we're not going to have leaks, we're not going to have outages or anything like that?
No, no. So as far as maintenance after the project is completed, restrained joint is an equivalent product to fusible PVC as far as duration and maintenance and things like that. It's not an inferior product to fusible PVC.
Okay. And so looking at
the one we're looking at, the restraint joint, it actually has like a coupling, a bolted on coupling to hold it together, correct?
That's correct.
And those are made out of iron?
I would have to go back and check, but I believe so.
Yeah, I think they make them out of iron and put some kind of coating on them because there's always a possibility of those rusting and giving way. But back to what Rebecca asked, why didn't we use this type to start with? Is this probably a different, a lesser alternative than the first one?
Right.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a lesser alternative. Whenever we were putting the plans together for ease of construction and wanting to try to and get out of the way as quickly as possible, fusible PVC seemed like the ideal option. There's a significant amount of pipe bursting and trenchless work in this project. So fusible, as far as constructability, would potentially be a little bit easier for contractors. But restrained joint is also an acceptable option. It's not an inferior product. The reason that we saw some prices come back higher for fusible is just a familiarity difference. And that was some of the feedback that we got from contractors after the first bid, was that they just weren't familiar with fusible PVC as much. And so their prices were a little bit higher.
So have we used this type of joint on the other 12 inches that we've installed around town? Specifically the one on 105 to the high school? I think we did that maybe what, 4 or 5 years ago?
I would have to go back and check and see what we did there. I apologize, I'm not familiar right offhand.
That's the main question. Sorry, Randy, go ahead.
The contractor, what you're saying is they're real familiar with this type of joint, not the fusible, right? What you're saying? They
are, yes. So they submitted a list of references. They've done a lot of work with the city of Houston, both sanitary sewer and water lines. They've done fusible, they've done restrained joint. We called their references and they said that they were good to work with, and we offer no objections to working with them.
So both of them that bid that we're looking at, those are the two that bid on the second bid, so to speak, right? Or is one of these the first bid that we rejected?
No, neither one of them bid on the first project.
Okay.
My question for you, Catherine, was the folks that originally bid, were they given the opportunity to come back and counter or rebid the project?
Yes, sir. They were given the opportunity to rebid.
Okay, and they still didn't come down on, okay.
They did not. They pulled plans whenever we were during the bidding process. We post the projects online on a public bidding forum, and we can see who has pulled plans. And the original bidder did pull plans, but they did not submit a bid.
Hey, Kevin, what's the expected life cycle of this 12-inch line?
Usually with PVC, our expected life cycle is about 40 years.
That's 40?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What's the square or the linear feet that we're putting in with this this proposal that y'all suggesting that we accept?
I'm sorry, you were kind of cutting out. You're looking for the linear feet of water line we're installing?
Yeah, the total linear feet we're looking at for the project.
Offhand, I want to say it's about 3,300 linear feet.
Because I was looking back at our golden master plan that Joseph Carter did for their city, and the city accepted in 2015, and it had this project in it, and it had the prices and all, and excluding, and I think that project was for 5,000, linear feet, and the price was like 500,000. I know that was 5 years ago, but this is almost double, and with not a little bit more than half the linear feet. And it looks like we kind of underestimated what this cost would be, right? Based on
a little bit
loan.
A little bit was an underestimation, and some of it was, you know, with the environment that we're in right now with the coronavirus environment. It has changed bid prices from what we've seen a little bit, and you know, we're glad that it came in lower than what it originally bid at. But I think it may have been a combination of a slight underestimation and just changing in the market.
That much, huh?
So that begs the question, Richard, does it make sense for us to wait on this until things stabilize, or should we go ahead with this because we've already borrowed the money, we're already paying for the project? What's the cost of waiting until the coronavirus costs have subsided?
Well, I didn't anticipate that question here for this item, but I have been giving thought to that subject in general for projects looking forward. You know, in this particular case, as you said, you know, we've borrowed the money, we're incurring the payments, so time, you know, is an element here. And I do think we can get by for the short term without this work being done, but with the uncertainty out there in the environment of what we're looking at over the next 6 months, you know, if we end up with greater restrictions on working, I think there's a greater likelihood that some of those costs could go higher rather than come. There's much more opportunity, I think, for them to go higher than there is for them to come lower. And I think then we play the game of we pay additional interest and we run the risk of significantly increased costs. So it's a guess either way, but I think there's more risk to putting it off than there is to doing it now.
Okay. And we've also felt that this would improve water pressure and thus safety on the west side of town. Is that also still the case?
Yes, that was the original intent behind this project, was to increase pressures to the west side.
In which case, safety doesn't really have a value that you can quantify. So going forward makes much more sense rather than kind of getting wishy-washy and trying to decide whether you're better off going now or 2 months from now.
Right, and there is a risk with bidding a project a third time that contractors lose interest.
Right, good point. I had a quick question on the location. We were talking about this going north on Pond Street, but I see that there's parts of Pond Street that I've never driven on, included on this map. Is that, are we doing something to Pond Street as part of this project?
No, ma'am. So this project does not include developing the rest of Pond Street. So the city owns that right of way that is not currently drivable, but this project doesn't include developing Pond Street into a drivable road.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm all for the putting the 12-inch line in and leaving out alternative number 2. I don't think we need that. But the original master plan and the original scope had the 12-inch going from Pond, going east all the way to Flagship Boulevard, right in front of the funeral home, to the tightening of the existing 12-inch. So apparently part of that was taken out of the project, and then also the last little piece, which is an 8-inch there in yellow, alternate 1, is now being taken out. If it would be, the alternate 1 would be put in 12, you'd have 12 to the, I guess that's a 10-inch it ties into, and doing away with the 8.
Right, so that's correct. So that was in the original scope, and I believe the 2015 study did have it tying in across at the funeral home. And the reason this was removed from the scope of work was, one, due to budget restraints, and as far as getting pressure out to the west side of the city, which was the primary purpose for this project, that piece was not as necessary to get pressures over to the west side. Originally, it was included in because TxDOT was going to be doing their downtown work at the same time. And so the city has approached TxDOT about an AFA, an advanced funding agreement, where when TxDOT is already doing the work downtown, they would install the water line at the city's expense. But since TxDOT is not doing that project at this time, the timing doesn't work as well as we would hope. And then with the budget constraints, it's a piece that eventually, yes, will need to be done, but is not as urgent to be done right at this moment.
Yeah, because a lot of that 12-inch on the east side, also a lot of that went into the master plan as far as fire contingencies and so on. But I guess I have no problem with what we're trying to do. I guess the problem I have really is with the process of trying to lump these projects together. And then this one, we kind of undershot pretty good. So now we having to take a cut here, and then whatever's left to the pie, we'll have to fight over it for water plant number 3. And that's the process that's killed the city in the past, like water plant 3 and the cooling tower issue that we dealt with for the last 4 years, by trying to manage it this way. And that's the process I'm talking about. No problem with the project. We definitely need the 12-inch line.
Right.
I wish we could get away and just do one project for one, I guess, loan or whatever, water board loan, instead of tying it into a package with preset funds. And now we're going to have to cut these projects up from our master plan that everything was decided on 5 years ago where we're heading. Our impact fees are based on all those. Everything's based on all that. And now we're chopping it up because of budget. And that's going to impact us, all the calculations, all the decisions we made 5 years ago down the road.
Well, but Randy, you also have to take into account that 5 years ago was a really long time ago in terms of the development, and things have changed significantly. So, it might be time to reevaluate how some of the pieces fit, given how things have actually developed and what needs to be done. And there may be a different way to achieve some of the goals, given how some things have built out already.
Well, I think the first thing you do, to me, I would do, before I go get my loan based on that data, which apparently that's what we did, old data, get the loan, and then after get ready to really put our pencil, sharpen our pencil and look at these projects and get down to the brass tacks, how much it's going to cost and what we want to really do. We've already borrowed the money and we're stuck now. We have to stay within those constraints, kind of like we did in Callahoola Well. That's happened to us then, and I hate to see it happen to us again. You know what I'm saying? I agree that the price has changed from 2015 till now. No issue with that. The problem is maybe we got the loan too early before we really knew what we would really need for these projects.
Right. Well, I hope that there's the opportunity to modify the scope of some of the projects, even if we are in the right ballpark. At least maybe we're shooting for left field instead of center field on some of them. We might get approval for the specific project, the plans, even, as long as we're fairly close to what we originally borrowed for.
Yeah, I just hope we don't have to gut water plant 3 project too bad.
Well, with that said, Randy, I want to ask, not being a water expert in this regard, are you saying, number one, is what we're doing, is it going to be enough for what our projected growth is going to be, number one? Number two, are any of these projects going to have to be redone or modified later on based off the growth that's going to happen?
So the projects that are being completed, these are, these are intended to, yes, to serve the future projections of the city. Now, the study that Randy has mentioned was completed in 2015, and there were some projections completed in that study as well. We have gone back and revised our projections based on how development has actually occurred, and seeing the pace of growth based on what has actually happened compared to what was projected in 2015, which is, it's a lot of, it's a projection, it's an estimate. And so taking the actual data that we've had, the actual growth, we've modified it. And so these projects, both this one and the water plant number 3 improvements project, will be sufficient to carry us into the future for future growth for the city.
So this is enough to continue forward. Okay.
Right.
And there's no reason as well that even though this is the pot of money, the 1.3 million, or sorry, the 1.7 million for this project and Water Plant 3, it doesn't mean that we can't find more money to put into what needs to be done for Water Plant 3. If what needs to be done is what needs to be done, then we'll have to find the money to pay for it. I mean, you know, if a house needs a new roof, there's really, you know, you can't just, you know, fix half of it. You have to fix the whole thing regardless of how you pay for it. So, you know, it's convenient to have the money from the TWDB at low interest rates, but if we have to find the money, then we'll just have to suck it up and find it somewhere, even if it's not from the same source.
That's right. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but after Water Plant number 3 project bids, which is in about 3 weeks or so, we'll be sitting down with city staff and looking at budgets for how did the Water Plant number 3 project come in, which also has some alternate items to give us the same kind of flexibility we experienced with this project. And we'll be sitting down with city staff to look at it and see what makes sense for what's absolutely necessary for the city. What does the city have to do? And where is the funding going to come from, whether it's from the TWDB, and then get city staff's input on any potential other funding sources if needed. So that's something
it may be as well that things are modular, where you can get a lot of it done all at once, and then something could be added on at a separate time more easily when money is more available as well, or as a second project, a standalone.
Right.
Hopefully. That's just my Pollyanna view of things.
Catherine, I had one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
On maps and the location of where the line's going, I looked at 3 different maps and every one of them was different. Hopefully the last map is correct on where this line, the existing lines are, and where this line's going to go, because the first one in 2015, the master plan showed you going down, brought down 149 and replacing the line down there. That's where the sewer, the 6-inch line was. But then, especially in front of, I guess, Randy's, and I guess the little community center right in that area there that showed the 6-inch line along the road 149 there. But now this project, the lattice map shows it being moved to Pond, and now the water line shows to be on Pond Street. Did y'all do any verification to be sure the lines are where you think they're at? Because just in 3 or 4 years, I see maps with lines at different places.
Right. So since those original maps were created, we've done more verification. We worked with Public Works to verify the location of those water lines. Whenever the survey was completed for this project, I went out with Mike and he potholed some of the lines to make sure that, especially in the undeveloped portion of Pond Street,
right,
he potholed it and made sure that this is where the water line is, because we don't want to be replacing a water line that doesn't exist. So we have done the verification to say this is where the existing water line is, and we're going to be just replacing it where it is.
Good. Yeah, because especially Pond Street, I see it a block off on one drawing from the other one. So that's excellent. And all this is trenchless, right?
I'm sorry?
It's all trenchless pipe, right?
There is some open cut whenever we're going across in areas that we can do open cut. We are doing open cuts. Prices come in a little bit better, but there is a significant amount of trenchless work to be done in here. Another part of the scope of this work is we included a temporary water line in the bid. So it's one of the bid items. The contractor is required to set up a temporary water line, temporary connections to keep everybody in service and try to minimize the impact to everybody as much as possible.
And in front of Chris Cheatham's building by Cedar Break Park, he has that nice paver stone along 105. Mm-hmm. I think y'all put the 12-inch line in there already, so you don't have to tear his real pretty area up. You just untile on both ends of that.
That's correct. So whenever he was putting whenever he was developing his site, we went ahead and put in that 12-inch line right there, and it is stubbed out on the northwest corner in Cedar Break Park. So we'll just be tying into the stub out right there, and then as you continue to go east, there's another stub out on the other side of his property.
Right. Yeah, I didn't see it on your package map, but I did see it on the city map. Okay. That's all I had. It really, so really, you don't see any problem with the 8-inch on the east side then, right? That alternate one?
No, not at the moment. Like I said, eventually it would be nice to upgrade that to a 12-inch and extend it all the way to the funeral home. But as of right now, that is not a point of restriction for getting water over to the west side of the city and increased pressures and water quality. And so the route that we're taking is what we have determined to be the most efficient way to get those increased pressures and better water quality to the west side.
Well, I think that was for the east side of town, Kroger's and all the commercial on the east side, especially if you lost the water supply coming across the bridge that we just replaced a while back. All the water's gonna have to come through here and Buffalo Springs to get to all the commercial businesses on the east side, correct?
The commercial businesses on the east side have a water line that comes down Lone Star Parkway.
Correct, and that's why we put in the 12-inch across the bridge. But
Right.
the master plan was trying to make a loop where in case you lost one source, it all come, and that source was lost. The scenario would be you get it from this pipe right here. That's why it was being put in as a 12 versus an 8 to supply the east side. So
Right.
it just,
So again, something that should be done eventually.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
If we're ready to move on, I'd like to move to award the contract to Neary Construction LLC based on their proposal for the base bid plus alternate number 3 in the amount of $913,338.
Second. Second.
Sarah, do you want me to repeat?
Well, so I have a question. I don't have alternate 3 on the bid sheet. It says alternate item A16.
Okay, so alternate 3 is the substitution of the water line material included in the base bid from fusible PVC to restrained joint PVC,
okay,
and replaces bid item numbers 2, 15, and 22 with bid item number A16.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And I'm obviously reading straight from Dave McCorkadle's email, not actually my own genius.
Okay.
There you go, Dave.
And the motion was seconded, is that correct?
It was by Kevin.
Yes. Kevin Lacey.
All right. There's been a motion made to award the bid to Neary Construction for the downtown water line replacement project in the amount of $913,338 with the base bid of items 2, 15, and 22 plus alternate number 3. This motion is debatable, amendable, or requires a majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor of accepting the awarding the bid for the downtown water line replacement project to Neary Construction LLC in the amount of $913,338 with items 2, 15, and 22 plus the alternate number 3, say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will award the bid for the downtown water line replacement project to Neary Construction LLC in the amount of $913,338. And that will include the base plus items 2, 15, and 22 and alternate 3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
All right, next item of business on your agenda is item number 5. City Administrator updates regarding unattended donation boxes.
All right, thank you. All right, since the last City Council meeting where we had discussion related to the unattended donation boxes, we've been looking more closely at these boxes as well as looking into the formulation of an ordinance related to the item. As we've been watching the boxes more closely, we've noticed a couple attributes related to that. Several of them have gone from empty to overflowing with items strewn about. When we place calls to several of the boxes numbers. Generally, they've come out within 2 days to, to take care of those items, generally clean up around them. But we've also noticed from time to time some larger items that have been placed around them have just been moved where you have boxes near each other. Some of the debris was moved from outside of one box to outside of another box in the area rather than being cleaned up or taken away. As we've looked through boxes that were stacked around those areas, predominantly the addresses we've seen on those boxes, presumably mailing boxes that have been reused to put stuff in, predominantly come from addresses that are outside the city, that are listed. These boxes seem to go pretty quickly from straightened up back to a cluttered scene. And so at the staff level, we think, for us to craft an ordinance permitting these, we're going to end up having to put a lot of time into doing close monitoring and making contact with those companies, because we've been doing that a little more over the last couple of weeks, and it seems that it's just going more likely to be a continuing item on and on. With that, staff is of the opinion that we should look at an ordinance that requires a donation box within the city to be manned. And while that will limit the sites that would probably be out there, we think that is the best way to make sure any such sites are properly maintained. As a balance to that, we would be, in fact, we've already started working to do this, planning to put together a list of donation opportunities that are available in the local area. And we would look to not only just keep that list at City Hall if we're called, be including that with our regular mailers that go out from time to time. And so the recommendation on input from staff is we want to see if council would be agreeable for moving in that direction, or if council wants us to go to the direction of, would rather go the direction of permitting, the unmanned sites. And if that's the case the council wants, we will make that work. But staff's recommendation in this regard is to go the direction for manned sites. And so I wanted to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It would be great when we have folks that come in and connect their water accounts. They probably are moving in and purging. If they didn't purge prior to, so maybe in our welcome bags, we can give them donation places as well.
Yeah, we could definitely do that for people come, the incoming people like that, where we give them welcoming information. And we would, as I said, plan to put it out regularly with mailings that go out. I mean, as you know, we send out utility bills that have inserts. If we have a 3-page mailer that leaves a blank site for 1 page, there's also the opportunities to insert items in between lines and fill space. And so it gives us something we can regularly send out.
They sound like great alternatives to what I've been seeing in town.
I'm disappointed because
go ahead. Go Becky.
I said I'm disappointed because it's not the outcome that I wanted, but I understand and respect what you guys have tried to come up with, and it just doesn't look like it makes sense from a workflow perspective or a visual attractiveness perspective. So I don't really see that we have an alternative but to go with what you're recommending.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the direction I thought we would end up, but as the closer we looked at it, it just seemed to be the most realistic. And I think the part that got me the most was there were a couple of these that we took photos of so that as we monitored them, and you see in one photo, one item moves from one area to another, and then in a third photo, it moves again. And, we end up feeling like we're wearing the striped shirt of the referee, as opposed to some of these boxes. I'm not saying that they don't want to do their part to be good players, but they're not doing the complete job, and the city ends up potentially suffering.
Yep.
Richard, I would like to, if possible, since that last meeting, I got a little passionate because remember I felt a little doofed for my donations that I thought was going to a charitable organization. I would like to introduce a third option. I would very much like to consider banning them from the city limits, simply because there are, and I've been looking into it as well since our last meeting, there are lots of different opportunities for donating through churches and organizations here in Montgomery, where they will actually take those items and give them to people that are in need, rather than selling them or chopping them up and selling them as oil rags for profit. That would be my interest. I would like to have them removed from the city personally altogether.
Well, one of the reasons that we didn't look at just doing an outright ban is that ends up being a taller hurdle to get over, but it's certainly one that I can discuss later this week with the city's attorney, and we can bring that back to council either way.
I can tell you right off the top too that outright bans come with some constitutional issues, First Amendment issues. There are some cases out there where cities have outright banned it, and it's like you know, the bans against panhandling. You know, you can regulate it, but you really can't ban it. So the way most cities are going is to require the manned collection stations, which for the most part does effectively ban it, because these companies are not going to put a live person out there and keep them there on the payroll for the most part. But we can look into that further if you want us to.
Well, here's my thing about this. I understand that makes sense. That makes sense. Like I said, these are not donation boxes. Like, what are they? I forgot what he called it. It's not donations. It's an organization. It's a for-profit business that's just taking these things and selling them. So my question is what other benefits are there to the city? Are they paying taxes to us based off what they collect with these boxes, or?
So there is going to be a difference between the for-profit guys and the not-for-profit.
Right. Right.
So you can make it.
For-profit are the ones I'm not interested in. I'm more interested in more of the actual nonprofit that goes to help people. I think that was my main issue. And yeah,
right, but that's a personal choice, though, Kevin. I mean, recycling isn't a problem for me. So, you know, as long as it's fairly labeled, I don't think that that's an issue. But either way, I mean, avoiding litigation and the expense thereof seems to be an important priority. And I think, you know, we kind of talked it out last time. So, you know, what we were hoping to go for doesn't seem to be an option. So, you know, let's do what Richard said and try and, you know, go the route that involves the least staff time and results in the best looking city that we can while avoiding litigation.
Well, no, certainly. Yeah, definitely don't want to look for litigation. I'm just saying that that'd be my preference. You're right.
Yeah, and Kevin, when it comes to, you know, the items that we would put together with the donation list, you know, one of the first things we discussed internally here is contacting the local churches, the local organizations that are right here in Montgomery, where, you know, something that, say, you as a resident might donate will go to somebody within the community. I'm sure we'll have other larger organizations that might be farther out and county-wide and regional on the list, but we'll try to keep the city-specific ones closer to the forefront of the list.
Right, and you can always put for-profit recycling in there as a category. All right. I think, are we in agreement on that then, that that's the best way to go?
It sounds like we have the marching orders on that. I'm satisfied.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have a choice. That's where we've come to. Is you can't leave it as it is. You can't outright ban it. This middle road seems to be the only choice we have.
Right, and since that was different from the conversation we had last month or at the last meeting, that's why I wanted to come back with an update and get input from council before we proceed down that direction.
So just to be clear, we're not talking about requiring permitting. We're talking about just requiring staffing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what hours or days are we asking for the staffing?
You know that. Well,
TBD.
Yeah, that's something that we will discuss internally. We didn't want to proceed too far down this until we had input from council. Okay,
I'm good.
We could say only Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10. That'd be perfect.
Right.
All right. Thank you then on that item.
Thank you, Richard.
So
there's nothing in the executive session, and There is nothing, is there anything for council inquiry? Okay, well, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. This motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and we will adjourn this meeting. It is exactly 7 o'clock on the dot. Thanks so much for attending. Great meeting. I appreciate y'all. Have a great week.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.